There are instances when certain behaviors seem unavoidable, almost as if they are escapes amidst turmoil. They begin subtly, often as a means to evade a persistent feeling of discomfort or emptiness. As time progresses, these choices evolve into habits, and what initially appeared as a temporary fix soon morphs into a vicious cycle. The pursuit of fleeting solace and a momentary sense of peace slowly transforms into a harmful routine. But what truly lies at the core of this cycle? What motivates someone to continuously pursue something known to be detrimental to oneself? The reality is that these actions often stem from a deeper injury, attempts to fill a void that seems unfillable. The individual is not driven solely by pleasure or instant relief, but by a need to reconnect with something absent, even if it outwardly seems destructive. What's at risk is a concealed search for meaning, an effort to heal an invisible pain that eludes conscious control. Have you ever pondered why some individuals plunge into addictions with no apparent return, while others seem to inexplicably avoid these pitfalls? Addiction represents one of the most intricate and daunting challenges to the human psyche in our society, manifesting in diverse forms ranging from substance abuse to compulsive behaviors that often mask a profound existential void. What lies behind this almost irresistible urge to flee from reality? Is it merely a lack of willpower, or is there something more profound, something that most of us fail to perceive? In this presentation, we delve into addiction through the perspectives of Carl Jung and Gabor Mate, examining how addiction surfaces and why it can become a challenging cycle to break. We'll discover that our addictive behaviors are not merely reactions to external stimuli, but reflections of unresolved inner conflicts. Our aim is to comprehend addiction not just as a behavioral issue, but as a symptom of a deeper malaise. According to Jung, addiction is not just a flaw in character or moral failing, but a manifestation of an unbalanced human psyche. Jung posited that at their core, addictions are escape mechanisms, ways to cope with psychological pain or existential emptiness. When a person cannot face their internal issues, they might seek solace in addictive behaviors, which provide temporary relief for deeper suffering. Jung considered the psyche in its entirety, a complex network of conscious and unconscious elements. Falling into addiction often represents an unconscious effort to fill an inner void, which might arise from a lack of meaning, emotional disconnection, or unrecognized personality aspects. Jung also thought that addictions could be viewed as escapes from reality during periods of stress, anguish, or existential crisis. An individual might resort to substances or compulsive behaviors in an attempt to avoid life's pressures. However, such escapes are never lasting, and returning to reality often proves even harder, leading to a vicious cycle where the addiction exacerbates rather than resolves issues. In his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Gabor Mate notes that no matter how often false needs are met, they never truly satisfy us. The brain can never really feel it has enough, that it can relax and attend to other vital matters. It's as though, despite having a full meal, one remains hungry and must immediately seek more food. Mate defines addiction as any repeated behavior, whether substance-related or not, in which the individual feels compelled to continue despite its adverse effects on their life and the lives of others. When considering addictions, we often focus on substances, yet behavioral addictions are also prevalent and can be just as destructive. Compulsive engagement with social media, pornography, video games, gambling, sex, shopping, or even activities like physical exercise or work can become addictions. As Mate explains, any passion can become an addiction, but how do we differentiate between the two? The key question is, who is in control, the person or their behavior? Mastering a passion is possible, but an uncontrollable obsessive passion is an addiction. If in doubt, ask yourself, given the harm you're causing to yourself and others, would you be willing to stop? If the answer is no, then you are addicted. If you cannot give up the behavior or keep your promise to stop, then you have succumbed to addiction. There has been much debate about the origins of addiction, while some attribute it to personal failings. A more accurate view is that addiction results from the interaction between the individual and the object of addiction. Addiction arises when someone regularly longs for a change in their subjective state or sense of being and becomes reliant on an object or activity to effect this desired experiential change. In Addiction by Design, it is explained that just as certain people are more prone to addiction, certain objects, due to their pharmacological or structural features, are more likely to trigger or accelerate addictive behaviors. Their distinctive potency lies in their capacity to produce a compelling type of subjective change that some individuals come to depend on. Given our constant exposure to potentially addictive objects and activities, this video explores the personal side of addiction and investigates why some people are more vulnerable to it than others. Mate has dedicated his career to working with addicts, arguing that all addictions, whether severe or mild, substance-related or behavioral, are attempts to alleviate suffering and emotional pain. Addictions invariably originate from pain, whether it is apparent or hidden within the unconscious. Far more than a pursuit of pleasure, chronic substance use is an addict's way of fleeing from pain. The types of pain that lead individuals to addiction are numerous and varied. Some develop addictions as a form of self-medication for depression, insecurities, or anxiety disorders. Others to cope with highly stressful jobs or relationships, and yet others to avoid the anguish of aimlessness or despair in face of life's existential voids. Mate recounts a conversation with a 47-year-old man, long addicted to drugs, who when asked why he continued to use drugs, simply replied, "I don't know, I'm just trying to fill a void in my life, boredom, just a lack of direction." Often the emotional pain that one seeks to escape through addiction has roots in the past, particularly in childhood. Research indicates that most individuals addicted to hard drugs were raised in abusive environments. Jung noted that all parental challenges inevitably impact a child's psyche, sometimes leading to pathological outcomes. The parental influence on a child's development and their susceptibility to addiction in adulthood is significant. Like a fetus dependent on the mother's body, in early childhood, when the brain is most malleable, a child is emotionally and psychologically merged with their parents. A dysfunctional childhood, laden with the pain of anger and parental abuse, suppresses deep emotional turmoil in a child's mind and alters brain development in ways that increase the propensity for addiction. Mate explains that many substance addicts claim they self-medicate to alleviate their emotional pain, but beyond that, their brain development has been compromised by their traumatic experiences. The dopamine and opioid systems, the limbic brain responsible for emotions, the stress system, and the impulse control areas of the cortex cannot develop normally under such conditions. However, it's not only childhood trauma that predisposes individuals to addiction. Children raised by emotionally cold or distant caregivers are also significantly more likely to turn to addictions in adulthood. Psychologist Alan Shore described this scenario as emotional parental absence of close separation. Although physically present and meeting all physical needs, a stressed, depressed, or internally tormented parent fails to nourish the child psychologically or emotionally. As Mate details in The Realm of Hungry Ghosts, a child can also experience emotional distress when the parent is physically present but emotionally absent. Normally, a child noticing this emotional detachment will attempt to reconnect with the parent. If the parent fails to respond adequately, The child may develop inadequate coping mechanisms, such as rocking or thumb-sucking as self-soothing behaviors, or they may simply detach to escape the distress. Children who do not receive attentive care from their parents are more likely to seek chemical solace from external sources later in life. But today, even individuals with nurturing childhoods are not wholly immune to addiction, much like during the decline of Rome, when masses turned to pleasure-seeking to alleviate the distress caused by a crumbling culture. Nowadays, many turn to addictions as a means of self-medicating against the despair fueled by a grim outlook on society's future. Additionally, the requirement to conform to the modern world by adopting consumerism as a lifestyle and compulsively using technology, social media, and entertainment to escape feelings of powerlessness and emptiness creates the perfect social storm, leading to an addiction crisis. Maté writes that a pervasive sense of deficiency haunts our culture. Addicts are more acutely aware of this emptiness than most. Many of us resemble addicts in our futile efforts to fill the spiritual void at our core, losing touch with our souls and spirit, and with sources of meaning and value that are neither contingent nor ephemeral. Our consumer-driven culture, obsessed with acquisition, action, and image, only deepens this void, leaving us emptier than before. Given the prevalence of individuals raised in abusive or emotionally absent homes, combined with a corrupt societal state, it is no surprise that many turn to drugs and behavioral addictions as a way to manage life. This approach is not entirely irrational or ineffective, as addictions do provide temporary relief from suffering and emotional pain. Maté shares an account from a drug addict who explained his drug use by saying, "It is to not feel the feelings I feel when I do not use drugs." Addictions are effective not only in providing relief from suffering and emotional pain, but also in temporarily lifting someone from the monotony or misery of daily life, transporting them to experiences filled with emotion, meaning, and joy. Early 20th century psychologist William James discussed the effects of alcohol, noting that it not only eases tension but can also induce a state akin to a spiritual experience, until the toxic effects of alcohol impair the mind and body. As James articulated in The Varieties of Religious Experience, alcohol's grip on humanity undoubtedly stems from life's deeper mystery and tragedy, granting many of us only fleeting glimpses of something profoundly significant during the initial stages of what is ultimately a degrading intoxication. While addictions may seem effective in the short term, relying on shortcuts for emotional relief and happiness incurs a cost. Over time, as we persist with an addiction, our tolerance increases and we become more dependent on the substance or activity to feel any positive emotion. Gradually, addiction becomes the focal point of our lives, while all else that could provide lasting satisfaction, our health, relationships, creativity, career, and life purpose, recedes into the background. Moreover, addiction alters brain structure in ways that undermine our capacity for voluntary control. When caught in the grip of addiction, we often experience what is known as brain lock, where our actions are driven by addictive impulses while part of our mind helplessly observes, fully aware that we are destroying our minds, hearts, and potential. Given the stronghold of addiction, a critical question arises. What are the chances of overcoming an addiction? The challenge in confronting any attempt to start anew, free from addiction, lies in the fact that the same mechanism required to heal the brain is impaired by addiction. As Maté cautions, the more severe the addiction, the greater the brain dysfunction, and the larger the biological hurdles to achieving health. Fortunately, our brains are remarkably resilient. Even in later life, it is possible for the brain to reorganize itself in ways that allow us to live, perhaps for the first time, a full, healthy, and addiction-free life. This introduces us to a fascinating concept known as nodal consciousness. This type of consciousness can disrupt the cycle of addiction because, instead of succumbing to the dualities of pleasure and pain, desire and fulfillment, it enables individuals to experience the full spectrum of human experience with profound equanimity. For Jung, the process of overcoming any addictive pattern begins with awareness. Without the ability to introspect and recognize one's own internal mechanisms, an individual is doomed to repeat the same behaviors, oblivious to the root causes of their issues. This process of awareness is a crucial step towards transformation, allowing the individual to realize that addiction is not a solution, but an escape from the real psychological problem. The first step in overcoming addiction is therefore to acknowledge its existence and its impact on one's life. Although this may seem straightforward, many individuals remain trapped in a cycle of denial for years, never deeply questioning the reasons behind their pursuit of relief through harmful behaviors. Once addiction is acknowledged as a temporary fix for a greater, more severe pain, the healing process can commence. The individual must reflect on the life factors that led them to addiction. Reflection is vital, for without it, one cannot grasp the deep-seated causes of their behaviors. As Jung described, the human psyche is layered with complexes and symbols, often concealed until the individual is ready to delve inward. According to Jung, addiction is a symbolic expression of what lies hidden within the psyche, an unconscious effort to cope with suffering and internal shadows. As a person begins to contemplate their addiction, they are, in fact, embarking on the path of individuation. Individuation, a core concept in Jungian psychology, involves integrating all aspects of the psyche, both positive and negative, into a unified whole. This requires confronting the shadow and repressed aspects without judgment, but with a willingness to learn what these elements have to offer. This journey of self-discovery and reflection can be painful, yet it is the key to liberation. In the context of addiction, reflection aids the individual in identifying thought patterns and emotions that sustain addictive behavior. For instance, an alcoholic might realize that alcohol has become a way to cope with loneliness or a lack of purpose. Here, the addiction is not solely about the substance, but about what it symbolizes, a defense mechanism against emotional pain. Once this is recognized, the individual can begin to seek healthier ways to manage their emotions and loneliness, replacing addictive behaviors with more constructive ones. Nearly every decision we make is an attempt to address the self issue, and addiction is no exception. It is simply a more extreme form of repetitive action, creating deep neurological pathways in the brain. Over time, these pathways become so entrenched that they are almost unavoidable and, at some point, inescapable. Both Jung and the concept of non-duality approach addiction similarly. They suggest that the solution to addiction involves transcending the separate self, or the pain and contradiction of the ego. However, there is a distinction. Jung seeks to resolve the self issue by working to integrate the various aspects of the psyche, which he termed archetypes of the self. When this integration occurs, the self ceases to be at war with itself, allowing the individual to experience a sense of whole, transcendent totality. This initiates a spiritual awakening and a profound shift in consciousness. This profound shift in consciousness also alters addictive behavior patterns. The most prevalent error made in dealing with addiction is the belief that it is merely a matter of insufficient willpower. In reality, addiction represents the exact opposite. It is a recognition that the issue extends beyond a mere personal resolution failure. This recognition does not lessen individual responsibility, but acknowledges the need for a power beyond personal capability. If one truly wishes to break free from addiction's grasp, though the journey to overcome addiction is ultimately an inner one, social support plays a crucial role in healing. Jung recognized that humans are inherently social beings and that our psyche is deeply influenced by our interactions with others. This implies that while addiction often originates from internal conflicts, it is also intertwined with social and cultural dynamics that can either facilitate or impede recovery. Thus, the path to overcoming addiction cannot be undertaken alone. It is imperative to rely on others to foster transformation and complete healing. Jung believed that humans evolve within a network of personal and collective relationships. These interactions profoundly impact an individual, shaping their psyche significantly. Within the context of addiction, this means that the social environment, friendships, family, and even broader societal structures can either support or hinder the healing process. Addiction often stems from emotional or social isolation, where individuals disconnect from those around them due to shame, fear of judgment, or a belief that they are misunderstood. Consequently, the recovery journey from addiction must be accompanied by a process of social reintegration. This involves reconnecting with the community, friends, and family, and establishing new support networks. Healthy social relationships provide a space for understanding, acceptance, and growth, crucial elements for recovery. However, not all relationships are beneficial, and it is essential for individuals to distance themselves from influences that might perpetuate addiction or reinforce destructive behaviors. The individuation process thus involves a deliberate selection of people and settings that are conducive to growth and healing. Social support extends beyond friends and family. Many recovery programs, such as anonymous groups, offer a supportive network that can be equally influential. In these groups, individuals facing similar challenges gather to share their experiences, struggles, and successes. The simple act of listening and being heard can have a significant therapeutic effect. Jung understood that shared experiences and narratives help individuals feel less alone in their struggles, providing a sense of belonging that is vital for healing. At its core, addiction is a deeply dysfunctional attempt to address a spiritual issue, a problem common to most people, whether they are addicted or not. As Gabor Mate writes in his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, not all stories have a happy ending, but the discoveries of science, the teachings of the heart, and the revelations of the soul assure us that no human being is ever beyond redemption.